Atop the salt-encrusted docks, and the piers of Seattle squats in an ugly clapboard shack, its windows smeared with grime and the walls draped with fishing nets. The oil slick, an aptly named bar riddled with age and barnacles, but a sanctuary to the swarm of deckhands and sailors that spent their days scurrying across the rotting hulls of ships, and their nights slipping into a drunken stupor. It's a rough bar, where a careless comment will earn you a punch to the face and a long fall to the grimly waters below. Only on given night, one can find an aged Chinese sailor curled up against the bar, a broad-shouldered old salt with a bulging gut and an empty stare plastered across his wide face. His name was Hao Meng, but the regular flotsam of the pub he's known for the man of the 28 dragons. 28 scaly, tattooed reptiles twine simultaneously across his arms and legs and twist menacingly across the bunched muscles on its back. Hao claims that each dragon represents a crucial part of his life. Stories all transformed into by ink. To buy him a drink, and he'll be happy to share the thrilling tales behind each one, carefully describing how the dragon's colors represent his joy, terror, love, loss, and death. Visit him 28 nights and buy him 28 drinks, and the powerful stories of his life will weave and you merge before your eyes until they resolve into the aging man drinking next to you. Then, satisfied you have exhausted his treasury of adventures, you'll excuse yourself and float on to the night. The light and the noise of the oil slick bobbing away across the dark waves, and the man of the 28 dragons will finish his drink and clutch his faded shirt to his chest. His last secret, his hidden dragon safe. He swore long ago to never reveal the tattoo or the story of any living soul, and he never has except once. Once on a stormy night, when the rain spattered like ink across the grimy windows, and the wind howled through the cracked wood when he told the story to me. It began as entertaining as I leaned on the counter, sipping my poison and watching Ming pummel the face of some quartermaster who had drunkenly slurred a remark, pre-training to dim slant eyes across from the bar. Stumbling backwards, the sailor grabbed Ming's shirt, tearing at the front and momentarily revealing Ming's chest. With a roar, Ming caught him under the chin, and he Dunkard slumped into the floor. Game over. Ming pulled his shirt back across his shoulders and walked back towards his drink. The noise in the bar returned to normal, everyone laughing and continuing to private banter. I was the only one who noticed it. The black serpent scrawled across over his heart, a Chinese dragon, its broad tail curling loops behind it, long whiskers sprouting from its face like tangles of wet hair. Arming myself with the twin barrels of gull and alcohol, I took the seat next to him and offered him several slugs of amber liquid. He recognized me as one of the regulars and knowingly accepted my offer as okay friend. He winked, holding out his arms. What story you want to hear tonight? I pointed my finger at his chest, indicating that hidden serpent curled around his heart. His smile vanished in a flash, and with an indescribable gaze, he stared into my eyes. His heavy lips curled down into a frown, almost a grimace. No good story, he grunted. Forget you've seen it, okay? I was tempted to give up, but noticed he was rocking slightly in his chair. Seizing my chance, I clapped him on the shoulder, telling him not to worry about it, and ordered him several more drinks in the spirit of goodwill. 2 hours and dozen drinks later, he broke. He began to sob quietly into his cup, telling me he was sorry, that he wanted to tell me, but swore he couldn't. With the precision of a surgeon, I knifed across his slurred words and stabbed into his psyche, prodding and poking until he dissolved completely. Closing his eyes, he began to tell the story of the Black Dragon. I'll share it with you here. The old ship Clipper shredded its way across the currents of the South China Sea. With a hull full of rice, she was bound on a 3-week trip to Sydney. Ming, the lines of age, not yet etched so deeply into his face, it was a simple deckhand on the rusted, peeling bucket. The days rolled into nights, and as Ming performed his duties, his mind locked on their destination. The poor condition of the ship meant it needed long overhaul in dry dock when it reached port, granting the crew a long-shore leave. The men joked every night and around the dim steel cabin about the things they would drink, the places they would go, the woman they would meet. But on the 10th day of the voyage, fate rose its middle finger against the ship and Ming's life. As the morning wore on, a steady breeze from the north quickly built into a typhoon. Waves pounded over the ship as the stinging wind tore across the bow. For the next 30 hours, Ming and the crew struggled against the howling chaos, shifting ballast and pumping the holds. Each man put every ounce of strength into saving the clipper, and ultimately his own life. The two of the crew were torn from the deck and swallowed by the storm, but at long last there was nothing left to do but to sit in the dark cabin and beg possession for mercy. The crew awoke to the cloudless sunrise, the sea once again tranquil and flat. Walking outside, they surveyed the damage, the rudder that had been torn free and the engine blocks destroyed. The ship was adrift. The cargo hold had been flooded. The cargo lost. Even worse, the crashing waves had reached over the boat and sheared off the communication tower. Without radio or navigation, low on food and fresh water, the crippled ship drifted helplessly across the blue expanse. Ming lay prostrated across on the metal deck, feeling the sun beat savagely against his body. 3 nights ago, the food supplies had run out and the water was put on ration, but a deckhand had died of an infected wound. Another injured man had escaped slow, lingering death by hanging himself. Morale was nil. Even the captain had begun to eye the end of his own pistol. The next night, a light appeared on the horizon. "Rescue!" cried the man to another. They quickly built and lit a signal on deck, waved its flashes into the dark, yelling and screaming out their savers. Their efforts were successful. The bright light was moving closer. At this point in his story, Ming dropped his voice into a low whisper. The crew's elation only rose as the tower drew near. Soon the second light could be discerned under the fist. The glow from the ship lit up the dark outlines outside of the men on the deck. They laughed and shouted, "Hello!" across the water, but not Ming. Backing away from the light, Ming stumbled down the deck until he reached the cabin. Peering out of a metal porthole, he watched the men slowly realize what he had noticed for. There weren't two lights. There was one light, reflecting off the undisturbed surface of the water. Above, floating high over the waves, the ship gilded into view, a dull silver dome, hundreds of meters across, eclipsed the stars that bore down upon the boat, its underside blazing with the inferno of the sun. A fire of light climbed into the sides of the hull and spilled across the deck, enveloping the crew. A heart hammering, Ming collapsed below the porthole. Outside, he hears the surprised cries of men rising above the crackling, luminous air. A pistol shot rings out, and another. Ming flees across the cabin, spotting a metal locker. He ducked inside, pulling the door shut. More shots. Then the cries of the men morphed into screams and shrieks. Crouched over, Ming peers through a gap along the floor of the locker. Suddenly the scream stops mid-breath. A spear of light smashes into the boat, the steel hull groaning and twisting. The inferno spreads across the length of the boat, penetrating into the cabin. The light pounces from the gap into Ming's eyes. With a yelp, he falls back. Into the blaze vanishes. Silence shrouds the ship. Ears ringing and eyes burning, Ming's head reels. He crouches down to peer through the crack again. Nothing. Minutes pass. With short breaths, he slowly reaches up to the latch, but as vision swims back to his clouded eyes and the ring in his head subsides, he freezes. A soft noise brushes against a cloud of silence. Pit-pat. Half deafened by the hammering of his heart, Ming listens to the stillness outside. Pit-pat, pit-pat, pit-pat. He leans back down into the slits and peers across the cabin, blinking in the darkness out of his eyes. Pit-pat, pit-pat. The gentle disturbance growing louder. Pit-pat, pit-pat, pit-pat. Struggling to see what lies beyond the upper edge of his vision, he lays his head back flat against the metal door. A long black tendril drips down from the darkness above. Ming nearly cries out, but swallows before it escapes his lips. Wide-eyed, he gazes at the thin legs of some unknown creature slap against the floor. Tendril, a inch wide. The legs end in knobbly stub that flattens it hits the metal. The leg stalks back and forth in front of the locker with rustling, disturbed leaves. The feet patter as the creature slowly walks into the cabin. The tendrils paused in front of the locker. Frozen in fear, Ming watches as delicately lumber closer in silence. With a softer sound than before, the brushing aside of a curtain, unseen arms explore the locker, prodding and searching. A sharp screech of metal, and the latch begins to rattle. As the bolt slides open, Ming clamps his eyes shut. A sudden brilliance of light flows within the gap. A sudden pitter, and the latch falls down. Soft footsteps retreating from the cabin. The light disappears. Once again, Ming is left in black darkness. The next morning, he slowly exits out of the locker and wanders onto the deck. The boat is devoid of life. The deck and cabin were seared glossily black. A wide-holed metal did through the steel yawns down to the hull below. Quickly, Ming grabs the remaining fresh water and stores it into the ship's lifeboat. With the enough scorched pistol he finds near the railing, with starvation on his certainty, he casts away the clipper, rowing endlessly until its dark shape disappears over the horizon. The next day, he's discovered and rescued by an Australian freighter. He rages deliriously of floating lights, thin tendrils, legs that slap, and the soft rustling of the night. A week later, he explains the official inquiry that the ship's fuel tanks exploded and sunk with all the hands but himself. The clipper is never found, and the public's interest fades. Ming moves on with his life. As he finishes his story, he opens his eyes. I'm astonished, not to mention doubtful, at his vivid account. Still, I can't figure out why he has kept such an incredible tale held silent for so long. I ask. He turns towards me, tears rolling down from his wrinkled corners of his eyes. I shouldn't have told you that story, he mumbles. I tell no story, and people say stay happy. Annoyed, I grab my hat and rise to leave. Suddenly, he grabs my coat with both hands and pulls me forward to his face. The sounds, he cries. I hear them before. I hear them after. My whole life I hear them, but not see them. Now I know. I know what stalks in the night outside my house. He waves a finger in front of my face. You hear them too, but you know what they are. I know what they are following you too. Pit-pat, 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 pit-pat. Behind the shadows. If you. Anguish, he screams and spits tears flying off his face. Always, always, they're always watching. Watching you from the darkness.
What's up, my pretties? It's the Lion Queen here. I want to appreciate you all for tuning into this video, and I do appreciate you guys supporting my video by giving this video likes and stuff. If you really enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like, comment and subscribe if you're new, ring the bell for notifications to when I upload so that way you guys will get updated for whenever I upload. If you want to follow me on Twitter or DeviantArt, feel free to leave a follow on those if you are interested in following me on those socials. If you want to support my backup channel, known as Ms. Dark Shigo, feel free to subscribe to it, as a link to that will also be in the About page section. And with that being said, and that being the case, thank you so much for watching, my pretties, and as always, stay pretty.